Hi there! Why NoSQL databases are interesting? Anong meron sa NoSQL databases na wala sa traditional relational databases? After a long time in software profession, ang relational databases have been the default choice for serious storage, especially sa malalaking applications, katulad ng enterprise applications. And after a long period of dominance in the software industry, ang excitement about NoSQL databases comes as a surprise, especially sa demand ng data science in the business right now. Sa previous na videos, pinag-usapan natin ang overview about relational databases, understanding the advantages and disadvantages of relational databases. And in this video, you will learn the overview about NoSQL databases to understand why NoSQL databases are interesting to learn and use in your applications. Hi, I'm Lucman Abdulrachman, an experienced IT professional here to help you achieve your aspiration in becoming an IT professional. Ang term na NoSQL that we recognize today traces back on a meetup on June 11, 2009 in San Francisco, which was organized by Johan Oscarsson, a software developer based in London. Sa time na yon, ang big table ng Google at ang DynamoDB ng Amazon.com had inspired a bunch of projects experimenting with alternative data storage. Ginusto pangalanan ni Johan ang meetup ng something that would make a good Twitter hashtag, short and memorable, so that a Google search on the name would quickly find the meetup. With the suggestion of his peers, pinangalanan nila ang meetup ng NoSQL without definite definition sa ginamit na term. There is no general accepted definition nor an authority to provide one. So ang gagawin natin is to discuss some of the most common characteristics of the databases that tend to be called NoSQL databases. To begin with, obvious naman na ang NoSQL databases don't use SQL, although some of them do have query languages, and it makes sense for them to be similar to SQL in order to make them easier to learn. One of the most obvious shifts with NoSQL is the move away from relational model. Each NoSQL solution has a different model na ginagamit, which we put into 4 categories na pwede pa madagdagan in the future. Ang first is ang key value, and then ang document-oriented, then column family, and then lastly, ang graph databases. The first 3 share common characteristics, which represents relationship of models in aggregate orientation. Another important characteristics of NoSQL databases is that they are mostly generally open source projects. Mostly sa NoSQL databases are driven by the need to run on clusters or distributed database. However, not all NoSQL databases are strongly oriented towards running on clusters. Graph databases are one style of NoSQL databases that uses a distributed model similar to relational databases, but offers a different data model that makes it better at handling data with complex relationships. Mostly sa NoSQL databases are generally based on the need of early 21st century, especially sa pagdami ng operations over internet, katulad na lang ng social networks at sa pangangailangan ng data science in the business. NoSQL databases operate without a schema, allowing you to freely add fields to database records without having to define any changes in structure first. This is particularly useful when dealing with non-uniform data and custom fields, which is very difficult to achieve in traditional relational database. Because most of NoSQL databases are designed to run as a distributed database, pag-aralan natin ang CAP Theorem na ni-present ni Professor Eric Brewer in the year 2000. Para maintindihan natin kung gaano kaimportante ang technology na binibigay ng NoSQL databases. Ang CAP theorem is an acronym for consistency, availability, and partition tolerance. The CAP theorem states that in a distributed system, you can only deliver 2 of 3 desired characteristics as the trade-off. Ibig sabihin, kinakailangan mong pumili sa consistency, availability, o partition tolerance as a trade-off. Consistency meaning all clients see the same data at the same time, no matter which node they connect to. For example, kung nag-post ka ng story mo sa Facebook account mo, right after mo ma-post yung story mo, makikita na siya ng mga friends mo. Ang next is ang availability, meaning any client making a request for data gets a response even if one or more nodes are down. Ibig sabihin, kung nag-request ka ng information sa server or sa application, kapag not responding ito or nag-hang up, ibig sabihin, not available ang system. Ang next is ang partition tolerance, meaning the cluster must continue to work despite any number of communication breakdowns between nodes in the system. For example, kung nag-down ang internet connection sa isang location, dapat patuloy pa rin ang operation sa business over the system. Because of CAP theorem, we can categorize the different databases into 3. First is ang CP, delivers consistency and partition tolerance at the expense of availability. Next is ang AP, delivers availability and partition tolerance at the expense of consistency. And ang last is ang CA, delivers consistency and availability across all nodes. It can do this if there is a partition between any 2 nodes in the system, however, and therefore can deliver fault tolerance. Para maintindihan natin ang categorization ng CAP theorem sa databases, let us present how the characteristics are being traded off against the other 2 characteristics of CAP theorem. Una is ang CA databases, where ang partition tolerance are being traded off. Ang setup na ganito ang ginagamit na architecture ng relational database at graph database, whereas ang information is distributed into different domain databases. The information is usually categorized kung gaano ka-frequent ma-generate ang information. For example, sa retail industry, ang product information ay ma-generate lang kapag may bagong product na ibebenta. At ang sales naman ay ma-generate siya for every sales transaction. As a software architect, kinakailangan mong i-separate ang product information sa sales transaction para ang pag-scan mo during sales transaction ay mabilis. Dahil kung i-combine mo ang sales transaction at ang product information sa isang database, magiging mabagal ang pag-scan mo ng item during sales transaction. Ang problema sa setup na to is kapag ang network connection or ang internet connection ay nawala, hindi na makakapagpatuloy ng operation ang lahat ng clients because the clients are dependent to the database. Sa AP approach naman or sa cluster base, ang database ay ginagawa ng maraming replika. Nang sa ganon, pag nag-down ang isa sa mga database, pwede magamit ang mga replika para makapagpatuloy ang operation. For example, ang database na to ay pag nag-down siya, ang database na to ay magkukunik sa iba para magpatuloy pa rin ang replication, allowing fault tolerance. Sa CP approach naman, ang database ay ginawa ng replika sa mga slaves ito para pag nag-down ang main server or ang primary server, mag-act as database ang secondary servers or ang slave servers. Nang sa ganon, magpatuloy pa rin ang operation ang mga clients, allowing fault tolerance. Sa AP database or cluster-based na design, ang characteristics ng database na ni trade-off is ang consistency. Ang database na gumagamit ng approach na ganito is ang Cassandra NoSQL Database. Ang problema sa approach na to is kapag may bagong information sa isa sa mga database, hindi agad magiging available ang information sa ibang database. Although eventually magiging available din ito dahil mag-synchronize sila. Ang database approach na ganito ay nababagay sa mga document-based na mga websites katulad ng Google Search Engine at ng YouTube. Whereas kapag nag-upload ka ng bagong document, hindi kinakailangan ma-available siya sa lahat ng countries. Sa ibang database approach naman, katulad ng CA, ang information na nakikita ng mga clients ay consistent na pare-pareho dahil iisa ang ginagamit nila na server. Katulad din sa CP, kapag mayroong bagong information sa primary server, consistent ang makikita ng client 1 at ng client 2 dahil ginagamit nila na primary server ay iisa. Sa CP database with master, ang characteristics ng database na ni-trade-off is ang availability. Isa sa mga database na gumagamit ng ganitong approach is ang MongoDB NoSQL Database. Ang problema sa setup na ganito is pag nag-down ang master database, kinakailangan mag-elect ng panibagong master database sa mga slave database. Depende sino sa kanila yung mayroong pinaka-updated na information. At sa pag-update ng panibagong master na database, sa oras na yun, hindi magiging available ang database. Sa AP approach naman, kapag nag-down ang isa sa mga database, automatic magre-reconfigure ang mga database para continuous pa rin ang replication, allowing continuous availability ng other database sa ibang clients. Sa CA approach naman, pag nag-down ang isa sa mga database, patuloy pa rin ang operation sa mga clients, although limited ang mga operations na magagawa nila. Here are the types of NoSQL databases na pwede pa madagdagan in the future. First is ang key value database. Key value stores are the simplest NoSQL data stores to use from an API perspective. The client can either get the value from the key, put a value from a key, or delete a key from the data store. Examples are React, Redis, Memcached, Berkeley, HamsterDB, DynamoDB, and VoldermoreDB. Next is ang document-oriented database. Documents are the main concept in document databases. The database stores and retrieves documents which can be XML, JSON, BASIC, and so on. These documents are self-describing, which is hierarchically three data structures which can consist of maps, collections, and scalar values. The documents stored are similar to each other, but do not have to be exactly the same. Document databases store documents in the value part of the key value store. Think about document database as a key value store where the value is examinable. Examples of document-oriented database are MongoDB, CouchDB, TerraStore, OrientDB, RavenDB, and Lotus Notes. Next is ang column family databases. Column family databases store data in a column families as rows that have many columns associated with a row key. Column families are group of related data that is often accessed together. Examples of column family databases are Cassandra, Edge-based, Hypertable, and Simple Table. Next is ang graph databases. Graph databases allow you to store entities and relationships between these entities. Entities are also known as nodes, which have properties. Think of nodes as an instance of an object in the application. Relations are known as edges that can have properties. Edges have directional significance. Nodes are organized by relationships, which allow you to find interesting patterns between the nodes. The organizations of the graph lets the data to be stored once and then interpreted in different ways based on relationships. Examples of graph databases are Neo4j, Infinite Graph, OrientDB, and FlackDB. Why NoSQL databases are interesting? There are two primary reasons why people consider using a NoSQL database. First is ang application development productivity. A lot of application development effort is spent on mapping data between in-memory data structures and a relational database. A NoSQL database may provide a data model that better fits the application's needs, thus simplifying the interaction and resulting in less code to write, debug, and evolve. Next reason is ang large-scale data. Organizations are finding it valuable to capture more data and process it more quickly. They are finding it expensive to do so with relational databases. The primary reason is that the relational database is designed to run on a single machine, but it is usually more economic to run large data and computing loads on clusters of many smaller and cheaper machines. Many NoSQL databases are designed explicitly to run on clusters, so they make a better fit for big data scenarios. I hope that gives you an overview about NoSQL databases that will help you learn more and use NoSQL databases in your applications. In the next video, pag-usapan natin ang specific type of NoSQL databases and key value NoSQL databases. If you have questions or clarifications, please leave us a comment in the comment section below. And do not forget to subscribe and click the notification bell for more videos.